Life advice is like a box of chocolate. Only some of it is real chocolate and some of it is, well, shit. Telling which is not easy, which is why, to save you time and potential problems, I want to tell you about pieces of advice that looks pretty good, but does not taste good. No, we're not gonna waste chocolate for this film. Sorry. It happened to me a few times that I opened up to somebody about something bad that happened to me. For example, I would say, I was bullied in school. And the person would say, Daria, everything happens for a reason. I'm sure it made you a lot more empathetic person as a result. And I don't know if that person said it because they never experienced something similar or because they genuinely believed that. But sometimes that's just not true. Sometimes bad things happen for no reason at all, and it would be way better if they had never happened at all. Yes, it is true that something good can come out of a bad thing, or rather, you can use even the most horrifying traumatic experiences to make something good out of them, even though the process is painful and you still wish it never happened to you. But it isn't true that everything always happens for a reason. Imagine two men walking through the woods, and suddenly one of them gets shot in his arm with an arrow. His friend, who's left unharmed, says, "Let me carry you to the road so that we can get you to the hospital as soon as possible." But the man who was hurt says, "No, we need to stay here because I need to know who did this and why. We need to find this person." So they keep walking. But the man who was hurt keeps bleeding and, well, he does not make it out alive. I think often we get fixated on trying to understand, and we want a reason, we want a justification from the universe. Sometimes it does help to get to the root cause of a problem or to see an underlying pattern. But sometimes there's no reason, or there is a reason, but it isn't the most important thing we should be focusing on. It happened once that I had a pretty toxic micromanaging boss who was very unkind to me. And I really wanted to know why. What did I do to make them behave the way they did? Was it something I said? Did I not go enough to social gatherings? And after a long period of over-analyzing everything that I ever said or did, I figured, okay, it's nothing to do with me, but I still wanted to know why. Are they going through something difficult? Maybe a divorce. Maybe they have a bad manager who's mean to them, so they are only passing down the microaggressions. But looking back at the situation, I should have focused on what I could have done to protect myself. What could I have done to change my situation instead of overanalyzing everything and trying to understand why somebody is mean to me. The universe, or God, or fate, or whatever you choose to believe in is not picking on you. So instead of asking, why me? Focus on what you can do to protect yourself. Never give up. I wrote this one down even though I think this one is true, but I also think that sometimes we get it wrong. Let me explain. Rejection is a redirection, and the universe will never grant you peace in something that wasn't meant for you. So while perseverance is important, it's also important to know when your goal is no longer attainable and it's no longer serving you. But how to know when to let go and move on? So on one hand, you don't want to waste your time barking up the wrong tree, so going after this unattainable goal or this goal that no longer serves you. But on the other hand, you don't want to give up because of your laziness when just around the corner you could get what you're after. So whenever I'm pondering this question, to give up or not to give up, which is like 6 times a day on average, what really helps me is thinking about something that Seth Godin wrote. And he wrote that there is a very clear difference between giving up and quitting, and understanding this difference changes everything. Quitting is a calculated, strategic decision based on logic and assessment of the situation. It's about recognizing that something isn't aligned with your goals anymore and isn't yielding the desired results. Giving up, on the other hand, is an emotional reaction driven by fear, frustration, or the desire to avoid discomfort or hard work. It's often premature and prevents you from potentially achieving success. Which is which, only you can tell, so read the dear above, beware of the sunk cost fallacy, and deliberately decide, am I giving up or am I quitting? Quitting well and at the right time can literally change your life. How you do one thing is how you do everything. This piece of advice suggests that the level of care, attention, and commitment that you apply to one thing is likely to be present across everything else that you do. Well, if that were true, I would never do anything ever again in my life. I have anxiety, ADHD, 2 chronic health conditions, and sometimes I get a bit depressed about the state of the world that we're living in. So sometimes the fact that I grab a coat, put it over my pajamas, and go downstairs to the store and grab a box of milk, that's a win. Somebody said that there are days when you have 100% energy, and if you bring that 100% to the table, that's great. But there are days when you, in fact, have 20% energy. So doing your 20 that day, that's your 100. It just looks different, and that's fine. Even if we assumed that we always feel good mentally and physically, I just refuse to bring the same level of energy into everything that I do. Let's say cleaning my bathroom and sorting through some Excel files versus cooking a dinner for my friends or being a good partner to my husband. And you can interpret however you want being a good partner to my husband. I leave that to your imagination. But there's that versus sorting through all the Excel files. Definitely not the same level of energy and attention and commitment, and that's a good thing in my book. There is this graph in the book called Essentialism, and it explains that we all have more or less the same levels of attention and energy, and we can either choose it to spread it between tons of different things or pick one thing. And that's a choice we have to make. I pick the things that matter to me, and sometimes the rest I just zip through, and that's okay with me. Do not burn bridges. And I've heard this one so many times. This phrase originated from the idea of a retreating army during war burning the bridges so that the enemy would never follow them. Nowadays, it means cutting ties completely and eliminating a possibility of returning to a relationship or working together ever again. I do get the idea of do not burn bridges. Everybody deserves a chance to redeem themselves, to make amends, to apologize. But what if they don't take that chance? And what if it took all your courage to walk away from a situation that was bad for you? What if you were disrespected or mistreated? Some bridges should in fact be burned. Not all, but some, yes. You deserve the right to walk away from an abusive, toxic relationship that failed you many times. And it's okay to know that you've outgrown a situation and never have to return to it. Hey Google, play Let It Burn by Usher.
Sure, Burn by Usher.
Just to make one thing clear, I do think it's okay to cut ties with someone, but I don't think it's okay to stoop to their level of hostility. It kind of goes back to the guy who bled out in the forest from the arrow wound. If you engage into toxic or aggressive behavior, even though the other person did the same, you are only hurting yourself. There is this Buddhist saying, if you hold on to anger, it's as if you drank poison and expected the other person to die. So focus on yourself, protect yourself, walk away, and move on. Fake it till you make it. Not entirely wrong, but not entirely true. There's definitely a tricky balance to strike here. On one hand, we, the perfectionists, highly sensitive, anxious, and suffering from imposter syndrome, I know if you're watching my channel, you probably got the same full package to deal with. We often miss out on opportunities because we don't feel worthy of them and we diminish ourselves, and that's bad. Our internal compass that's supposed to tell us what's achievable or not, given our skill set, is way off, and we need to consciously fight this, get out of the comfort zone that kills potential and talent. But on the other hand, while confidence is helpful, pretending to be something you're not can lead to inauthenticity and ultimately backfire. It's kind of as if you were learning how to ski and you just said, I'm just going to wing it. And you go to the hardest black slope without a helmet, without any protective gear. And then you have a massive crash and it destroys your confidence and you never ever want to ski again. That's way worse than if you just had the humility to put on your protective gloves and pads on your knees and you would just go for the easy blue or green slope and you would just progressively learn. And it happens in real life. If you put too much pressure on yourself and if you start with something that's too hard, it can really destroy your confidence. Knowing your limits is important, and knowing you have the skills and the work ethic to bridge the gap between who you are today and who you want to be, that's the missing element of fake it till you make it, in my opinion. Follow your passions. I wholeheartedly agree. Follow your heart, carve your own path instead of following what everybody else is doing. As a typical good girl, people pleaser, box checker type of a person, at some point I quit my stable, well-paid, but somewhat unfulfilling job to jump into the unknown, learning about well-being and creating content online. But not everyone can do this. Not everyone can afford the risk, and not everybody would enjoy it. The stress of it all, the uncertainty, and also there are some drawbacks to tying your passions to your source of income. I feel a bit like I now lived two lives, one where I had my 9 to 5 and I focused on developing my passions outside of my working hours. And I also had this brief 1-year experience of trying to translate my passions into a full-time job. And to be honest, at this point, I couldn't tell you if I have a strong preference between these two, because both are imperfect. But you can also make both of them work if you really want to. I also feel like this idea that you have to love what you do was used to oversell us a dream that is not always viable in today's world. It made us work hard, give it our all, burn out, just to realize that once you've jumped through one hoop, then there's another one, and another one. I think it's okay for a job to be just a job, and for you to clock out and not to dream about what you do for work 24/7. Passions don't always translate into viable careers, and they don't necessarily have to. You don't need to make money from your dreams for them to be valid and important. Okay, and just a quick one in case you need a reminder today. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. A great song by Kelly Clarkson, by the way. But simply untrue. What doesn't kill you usually gives you trauma to deal with in therapy, so take ownership of your healing process. Give yourself time, love, and patience, because you deserve it. Always look on the bright side. And all the other toxic positivity quotes online. Gratitude is important. It rewires our brain, and having a positive outlook helps us cope better and live longer. But don't always look on the bright side. Sometimes the answer to all your problems is in the work that you're avoiding. And sometimes you have to face pain and other difficult emotions that you would rather deny. And you need to face your own darkness to move forward. But mostly look on the bright side. And on this very positive note, sometimes the most popular advice is the least helpful one. It's like when you say a lie so many times it almost becomes true. And if you are still here and still in the mood to diss some unsolicited advice, you can listen to Stop Giving Me Advice by Jack Harlow. Great song. I feel like it's a very musical episode. And this is the moment where I would normally ask for likes, but since I'm in my recovering people pleaser era, like if you want, or don't, subscribe or unsubscribe. I will be sad for a while, but I'll get over this. Thanks for watching.